Hello, everybody. So, last time I was basically trying to figure out how to update the animations to accommodate lights, or basically a point light, since that's the only kind of light that this application supports right now. And that's going fine. I mean, I think it was very predictable that it was completely tuned to handle meshes. And meshes were complicated on their own, so then expanding it to lights was going to be problematic. And then now I think that is starting to settle out. The main problem was that for a light, basically, when you changed the X position here, it didn't actually change. So then when you'd come over here to the light, it would be wrong. It would still be whatever the old X position was. So I got that fixed, and that was cool. So that was then, and now what I have at this point is a three model. And yet last time I mentioned a story about how like my understanding of the way lights works um, is um, in general in regular life has been improved dramatically by working on this project. And it reminded me of once I was taking one of my sons out to the park that's next to our house, and I wanted to get a picture, that a very dramatic picture that in a shadow where like half of his face would be like lit up, but then the other half of his face was dark. And I mean, we spent hours out there because there's tons of trees and tons of different shadowing setups you could come up with, trying to make that happen, and I couldn't. I was pretty, I guess, I don't know, deluded, I guess would be the best, because I think arrogant might be a little bit too strong. I was kind of delusional, thinking, oh, it's just real simple because I'd seen a photograph where someone had done that. And I was like, okay, now I'm just going to go out and do that. And I just didn't realize how much work, how much understanding people have. What are we, 225 in? People have to be able to do stuff like that. So then I was like thinking, oh, this is a perfect tool for me to sort of figure out, okay, what would I need to do a to create something like that, like create the right scenario for a half of a face to be lit up. And so I was literally playing around with this for like an hour yesterday, last night while we were watching Netflix, and um, it was like, oh, okay. Oh, and actually, the solution I came up with ended up requiring three lights, and then this morning when I was playing with it, I came up with one light. Um, so basically, there's a light off to the right and slightly to the front, and we're in a room. And I'm going to move the camera back just a little bit so that we can see. So right now the camera is at 2, and the main reason is so that the light is not visible. I'm going to move it back to 5. So you can see there's a little light here. So let's go look at the meshes. Um, and this is the light mesh. So it's sitting at 2 on the X and 1 on the Z axis. So basically to the right by 2 units and towards us by 1 unit. And that gets most of the half of the face, and or the model basically. So the model is sitting at 0, 0, 0, and then there's a stand um, that is sitting at -3, or -3 in the Y, but the reason is because it's like 10 tall. So if you imagine this room, there's like a beam shooting out the bottom of the room. It's kind of funny. But anyways, you can see the shadow coming from the light. So like, let's say you were like, oh, I want to get a dramatic picture of a profile. This would definitely, I think this would do it. Um, and then, yeah, there's a right wall, a ground, and all that. And the only thing that's animated is the model. Um, and then I also marked the light as animated. But in the 3JS service, there is no animation. All right, so that's that. This one was really more about a static models, and most of the code is all about enabling animations on the lights. And I think when I created the animation on the lights, it was pretty challenging, and most of the challenges came on like kind of my personal growth in TypeScript. You know, I spent a lot of time on TypeScript, but it has been quite the adventure. TypeScript is awesome. It didn't help that I was extraordinarily suspicious of Microsoft, and TypeScript comes from Microsoft. And I can remember the whole JScript and Microsoft trying to kill JavaScript and all that other stuff. So I was just like, there's just no way they're good guys in this. But, you know, I have slowly warmed up to TypeScript. Um, so one of the problems that occurred to me yesterday when I was playing around with this stuff is that if you only exposition is the only thing supported for lights. But yesterday when you did this Y position, I was getting a light in here. And that's such a common problem, you know, when you have a drop down and it's supported for some things but not other things. And there's like three answers that they tend the group consensus tends to land on one of the three. The first would be like only show the things that can be updated when you do. So right now I can show an X position and I'll see the light object. And then if you show Y position. Now the problem is that let's say we take this model. And I haven't even actually tried this, but like let's move it into edit mode, and then let's expand the model and let's unanimate it. And then when you go to animations, so there's nothing. And this is very, very difficult for QA to test. They generally don't like this. And they generally want something along the lines of showing the light in here, but having like a little note that says this is not editable. And that makes their scripts just a lot easier to make sense of. And that's generally their agenda. Now, most users don't like that because you can have the scenario where you have like 100 objects on here and 99 of them aren't editable. So then they don't want to deal. So the actual user doesn't like having to wade through that. They'd rather just come here and see nothing than see a bunch of stuff. And a lot of times, product doesn't like that because they want to be able to see if something's got a bug or not. And a lot of times bugs are hidden in when there's just nothing there. Like, do you know, is there a bug there because it's broken? I mean, is it not showing anything because it's broken, or is it not showing anything? So typically what they'll want is like a note that says there were no objects. Generally, what ends up happening on a very, very mature product is, so let's go back to X where there's something, is you'll end up with like some kind of thing at the top here. If anything is hidden, you'll say there's 15 unhidden, there's 15 hidden items right at the top. And that generally works for everybody. I don't think it's what's best for the user, but it is best. It's useful for QA and it's very useful for product. Since I don't have a product team and since I don't have a QA, I'm just going to make it to where if there's nothing editable when you select it, um, then there just won't be anything to edit. The other option that a lot of times they'll push for, and this one is just a terrible option, is to not show these. If there are nothing available that don't show anything, like that's kind of like the cut the baby in the half sort of solution. Yeah, it works, but and it works, and they claim that users like that, but users typically don't like that. And the reason they don't like it is because they don't understand when the Y position shows up and when it doesn't show up, when Z position shows up and when it doesn't show up. They would rather learn as they go. So like they know, okay, when I want to edit, so something can be edited. There's something that can be edited with the Y position, even though if all I have are lights animated, none of those are editable. So, anyways, um, that is just like a little UI UX rant, just from experience. Um, but the challenge that I had was in the animated properties, I needed it to be able to know when a when to and when not to show something. So, because basically what happens is the animation property component gets a input in, um, which is the animation pairs, and it just shows all the animation pairs. That's what it used to do, but now I don't want to show animation pairs for things that it can't edit. Um, so what I did was, I created this little sort of decoder ring uh, thing called supported props dictionary, and I when in the effects, the effect is going to run whenever animation pairs are changed. So animation pairs is a signal, and anytime animation pairs are changed, this effect runs because it sees that there was something in there that it cared about. The other signal that's involved is this property name. So the property name is this guy, X position, Y position, Z position. So the property names are limited to animation interface properties. As you can see up here, X position, Y position, and Z position are that. So I'm going to try to finish this fairly quickly. Um, so um, these properties are, so this little decoder ring dictionary thing that I have here says that an X position is supported by or lights and mesh, and then Y position is just mesh, and Z position is that. So so that's the first half, and this is basically what I had yesterday. And then um, the only thing I changed in that yesterday's code that did this is I added the type so that we would know what type is in the list of what's called table data. Right, so we have these table data things, and that. So let me get rid of that console log. Then I won't save that so I don't lose the UI. So then basically after once that's done, so the signal runs for this one as well, and the reason it runs for this one is because um, this property name is in there. So now what's happening behind the scenes? I have no idea. There's just no way to know what the signals code is doing. So the code, there's this function called effect, and this effect is in some way telling the Angular compiler, transpiler, to create some kind of JavaScript that basically listens for this property name to change. And so this property name changes when we select one of these. That's what changed, was the property name. So this code is written in, there's just no telling what kind of JavaScript is getting generated and how that works, but it works really well. That's all we can tell. But then basically this table gets filtered based on whether the type that was created by the, oh yeah, so I had all those console logs there so we could see. But basically we added this new type, and so based on the type, all of this stuff is applied to it, and then that happens. So all of that was basically, all that code is basically just to support the concept of not showing things that aren't supported in the list here. Now this could easily be modified to look up this property, to instead of using the support dictionary to add type, we could also add like supported, and then we could put like a little note next to it. We could render it and put a little note instead. You know, we could update the template to do that. But anyways, that's the overarching goal. Okay, so that is, I think all the code, well, almost all the code was written for that. Almost all my efforts yesterday were written to support that. There was one other piece of work that was done, and that was so that the to the communications between this and changes over here would go back and forth, which I already demonstrated works. So let me just start at the top down. Now that I've explained what we were doing, I'll explain how it was done. And I did do a little bit of that. So I added this supported property types. So these are any property type that is supported at all. And basically the only property types that are supported are, and property is the wrong word for that. Supported um, 3 types, 3 object. So we support object types. So we support lights and meshes. Basically, that's it. Cameras are coming soon. Scene is coming soon, and that's basically everything. I think. I guess renderers could. We aren't going to support that, but that would be something. Now, what's annoying? I'm going to change this back. So what's annoying for me is that the properties that we support are these X position, Y positions, and I don't understand why I can't do this. Why I spent a long time yesterday trying to get something along these lines to work. And see, then you get this error, and it says parameter cannot be literal type or generic type. Consider using an mapped object type, which then I also found like this 4 key in thing, but that didn't work either. It's weird because you can do like this. Well, I thought you could do that. But anyways, I ended up having to just say a generic string. Any string is supported here, which it would have been nice if I could have said just these things here. That would have been really cool. But it doesn't let you. And to me, it makes sense that you would be able to do that. But anyway, so all of this, both of these new properties, or these new TypeScript types were added just to support that menuing that I went over a second ago. So the code that I did, this was the only code that I did to make the lights update properly in the service. Actually, I did code in the actual component as well. And basically, just anytime you do a light update, you need to update the object, change the pointer of the object, and then publish that change. And that's all this was. And that was about half the work that needed to be done. And then the other thing was in the light manager component. Basically, I needed to add a new update forms, which I had to do this exact thing in meshes. And then update forms basically is what takes the changes and updates it. Now, I added this note because this solves I had mentioned this before in meshes. This solves a problem that I've been worried about, was like, okay, how am I going to export, import the forms and in the future? And this kind of lights the way. And then let me get rid of this guy here, this console log. And then I patch the forms. It's important that I patch the forms and not set the forms. I don't know why set worked over in here. In the mesh manager, when I was looking in my mesh manager to figure out how I try to stay consistent with how I did in meshes, I saw that I used set value. And so set value should not work. It does work, but since I added type over here, this is not a complete form, and I don't know what it does. I don't know if it must not be breaking the type or doing anything weird with the type, but whatever it's doing is an undocumented feature, and there's no guarantee that's going to work on the next upgrade. And the fewer of these sort of time bombs that you leave yourself, the better. So patch value is what you should be using if you're not going to be updating the entire object. Um, so basically, just a quick rundown on this. Basically, anytime the form is updated, the mesh item is passed in, and then the form is updated with the latest values from the mesh item. So in this specific case for Light Manager, it's a little easier to kind of contemplate over here because it's not the whole thing. But for Light Manager, I added a whole new form, the whole new function. And so anytime you make a change in the animation section, the Light Manager is basically informed. And that's informed because of this signal. Um, Anytime the light's value is published to, this gets called because of the signal. So a bunch of code, JavaScript is generated by the transpiler, and it's listening for that, and then it's running this update forms, this new update forms thing. So that, I believe that was the only Three.js. Okay, we went over the interfaces. We went over this basically. Oh no, we didn't. Okay, so anytime you make a change, I had else handle light update console log handle. Basically, anytime you make a change in if the pair type happens to be light, then we call update light. I think that's super clear. Um, Animation filtered. Okay, so yeah, and then I used to have a table data, but now I have filter table data because I'm filtering out anything that isn't of the right type. This is where all that's done. I think I went over that pretty thoroughly. Light Manager was updated to update the forms and Mesh Manager. So just to sum up, basically move this ball forward in two ways. One, I made changes so that the light editor and the animation editor stay in sync with each other. And two, I made changes so that in the drop down, only the objects that are qualified to be updated show up into in the list. And so what's next? What's next is I think all that's left is to actually go into the Three.js service and go to the actual animations function and add another loop that loops over the lights. And then that should actually do everything. I think I might have to rename this. I'm hoping that I can just rename this and make this thing capable of handling lights and that, but I probably won't. I'll probably create an update light for time and sort of hold it next to it and then see if it makes sense to kind of merge those into one function, or if lights and meshes are so different that it makes sense to keep them separate. That should finish up light animations for the moment, and I think it'll make sense to move on from there to camera animations. And in camera, I would love to be able to animate the X and Y position. And oh no, that won't finish up lights because then we'll take another round at the Y position, and theoretically, I believe this will happen, and if this is architected properly, that'll go smooth as silk, and then there won't be any weird code. All the code will be super obvious and easy, and then I will be able to zombie like code through that, and then if that works, then the Z position the same way, and then I'll probably be done with lights. I don't think there's anything else in lights at the moment that I want to animate. I mean, I could animate the intensity. Yeah, I could animate the colors. Now I think I'll wait on intensity and colors and get camera, and then once camera, and then get on the camera and kind of do the whole refactor, and hopefully that goes a little cleaner. And if that goes a little cleaner, then go to scene, which is just the background color. So that'll be the three colors. and then that makes a lot of sense. And then kind of go through the whole cycle again, doing like a mesh thing, a light thing, a camera thing, a scene thing. See if all that goes nice and clean. If it does, then kind of go up farther up the full stack and start and maybe add like a whole new property. And I'm thinking the property that I'd want to add would be this um, the what is it? The thing where it just spins um, blindly. Yeah, this rotation. Um, I would like to make the rotation something that you can actually set, and then once that's set, make that where you can animate it. And I think if all of that goes clean, if all of that goes clean, then the next step would be to like go in and start breaking all these things down into smaller pieces of code, into other services, and go into any of these components that happen to be like, if they're more than like 500 lines, then they need to be they need to get their own little services and all that. And then once that is done, we'll be in good shape for the next big boss change. And to me, the big boss change that's coming up is the export import. And I think once export import is done, then I think all of my initial proof of concept um, things that I wanted to prove is be possible in order to make this a useful product will be done. That'll be like my MVP. And then once that happens, I think it makes sense to just sit back and say, okay, does this need to be rebuilt from scratch at this point, or is it stable enough to be used as the foundation for, basically alpha? So go from POC to an alpha or a beta. But anyways, that's everything. 27 minutes. Jeez. Happy coding. Bye.